I'm back. Let me explain myself. Not sure why my camera keeps turning off. Anyways, I have just been away for some time. I feel like I needed just a reset, if you will, a rest for my soul, truly, for my heart. I know that sounds super emotional saying that out loud, but I did not realize just how much I needed a break from lots of things in my life, and one of those things included reading. So let me just say, I'm going to try and get back into a better posting schedule. I feel like this summer as a mom just really threw me off of my rhythm and routine in a good way. I think sometimes as a mom you can get in over your head with just all of the things that you have to get done and survive and keep your child thriving, keep you thriving, and yeah, it is the summer for a reason. And then on top of that, I've had family visit. We did a weekend getaway trip in June, and I just felt like I just needed to take a step back from this booktube channel. I love posting, and I really want to get back to posting on a weekly schedule. So I appreciate your patience with me and new subscribers. We've gotten 2 new subscribers in the last month, which is so fun, and both are moms, and I'm so thankful for that. So without further ado, let's talk again about all the books that I read in the month of June, which are not many. Like I said, I took a break from posting on this booktube channel, but I also took a break from reading. I've been at Dollywood Splash Country a ton with my son. I went on a weekend trip and just been doing so many things, and it has felt a little chaotic at times. It's felt a little bit of a grind, but needless to say, we are here, we are doing this, and I want to talk about all the books that I read in the month of June to start us off back into a rhythm of videos. So June was a month that I did manage to fit in an 1,000-page book, which we'll get to, Kingdom of Ash. I managed to finish a romance book series, and I managed to actually read a couple cozy mystery books, which I will also get into those and tell you, I think that genre is a really good one for me if I find myself in a reading slump. And let me tell you, by the time June hit, I was feeling the reading slump, and I was really feeling the summer slump. So I'm going to reference my phone in this video, which you've seen me do before, because I can't really remember where I was at or what I was doing. I remember in the month of May, I had slowed down. I had read a lot from Throne of Glass, and I knew that in the month of June that I wanted to finish the Throne of Glass series. So, month of June, we are starting out with actually a book on my Kindle, which I still love my Kindle case. I have debated getting a new one, but I also don't really want to. I love it. I think it's so pretty and so fun, and just a little girl like in a bookshelf. Something about it is so magical. But I read a book on my Kindle. This was through the Libby app. Highly recommend Libby. If you're wanting to rent books from the library, but you happen to like reading Kindle books, highly recommend that. So the first book that I read in the month of June is titled Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. This book actually did not take me long at all to read in the month of June. It took me about a week, which I think there was a couple things in the first week of June that just were busy on our calendar anyways with summer, and I have to say I really enjoyed this book a lot. This is by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This book is about Vera, and I'm just gonna read the plot synopsis right quick. Vera Wong is a lonely little old lady of a certain age, who lives above her forgotten tea shop in the middle of San Francisco's Chinatown. Despite living alone, Vera is not needy. Oh no. She likes nothing more than sipping on a good cup of oolong and doing some healthy detective work on the internet about what her Gen Z son is up to. Then one morning, Vera trudges downstairs to find a curious thing. A dead man in the middle of her tea shop. In his outstretched hand, a flash drive. Vera doesn't know what comes over her, but after calling the cops like any good citizen would, she sort of swipes the flash drive from the body and tucks it safely safely into the pocket of her apron. Why? Because Vera is sure she would do a better job than the police possibly could. Because nobody sniffs out a wrongdoing quite like a suspicious Chinese mother with time on her hands. Vera knows the killer will be back for the flash drive. All she has to do is watch the increasing number of customers at her shop and figure out which one among them is the killer. You guys, I heard about this through kind of the Fable app. And I really loved the book The Maid by Nita Prose, which that is a really fun cozy mystery book. And this book just kept coming up on for cozy mystery themed. I heard about this book as well on a podcast, and it just so happened that this book came available on my Libby app. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to just abandon all plans that I had for June, download this book and read it. And I have to say, it really just kind of brightened my reading senses for the month of June. I did end up rating this book 3.75 stars, and I will get into my rating in just a second, but overall thoughts of the book, it is such a fun time. If you are looking for a cozy mystery novel, if you're looking for Asian characters that are, I believe, done very well, if you are looking just for a really fun escape, and honestly, a hilarious book. This book had really laugh out loud moments for me, and moments where I just could picture Vera in this book. I could picture sitting in her tea shop, and I think that just marks a good storytelling book, a book that you find yourself just connecting with in a such a fun way, and I loved this book. Here's why I gave it 3.75 stars. I felt like about towards 50 to 70% in the book, so like that middle section, it kind of just dragged, and this book has a lot of POVs, and I am not one to dislike having that many POVs, but I felt like every chapter we were switching what character we were talking with, and I just really wish that the author would have had a little more continuity with that. I do feel like the second book in this series that I funny enough ended up reading this month in June was one that did that a little bit better, but I felt like this book particularly, it took some time to get through the POVs and to kind of understand who you were talking with, and so for that reason that affected my rating. But also, I'm not gonna lie, I did get a little bored about the 50 to 75% part of the book. I thought, okay, like kind of dragging this on, this isn't making sense. And then the catch-all was a really fun catch-all. I enjoyed that part and did not dislike it at all. I thought it was great, but for me it did take just some time to get into it towards the middle section. I really enjoyed this book though. It was a really fun, cutesy read. Definitely one that some people call like a popcorn read, where you just can't put it down and you're really enjoying it, but there's no super high stakes involved with this one. So that is Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. So that started off the month strong, and then the next part of my month, now like looking at my calendar, I actually did a pretty good job with this next book. I read it in 4 days. This was In Your Dreams by Sarah Adams. Now I am going to go ahead and tell you that I rated this one 3.5 stars. And I had some thoughts about this one. Thoughts that I don't know if I want to share fully. Maybe I will do a video about romance series at some point and say which ones I love, which ones are interesting. This is an interesting romance series, and I'm going to tell you why. Sarah Adams wrote 3 other books before this. This is the 4th and final book in the series. It's set in Rome, Kentucky. It's about Madison, who is the 4th sibling in this book, and she is an aspiring chef, but she's also a failing chef in New York City. She has some traumatic events that occur, and she's actually invited back to Rome, Kentucky to help open up a restaurant for her friend James, who lives on a family farm. And you know a lot of the other characters in this book because they're in the prior 3 books. So you have When in Rome, that focuses on the one and only brother in the story. Why can't I think of his name? There's Amelia Rose, and it will come to me. And then we have Practice Makes Perfect. That's about the sibling named Annie. I think Noah is the first person. Anyways, guys, I'm just like struggling today apparently. But then you have Practice Makes Perfect, which is about Annie. I loved that one. And then you have Beg, Borrow, or Steal. That's about Emily. And I thought that one was super great. People have mixed feelings about this one. But then you have In Your Dreams. And In Your Dreams is about Madison. I will say, I didn't dislike this book. I enjoyed it. It was fun to be able to wrap up kind of with a neat little bow all of the siblings, because this romance series is about 4 different siblings and their love interests and their love stories, and that that can be fun, especially if you're like me and in a bigger family, you have a lot of siblings, and that's always a unique dynamic to kind of see in book form, and I really enjoyed that. Here's what kind of took me out of this book a little bit. Number one, this book had a decent amount of spice, and I'm not one to dislike spice in books necessarily, but I'm also not one who is a fan of reading a 4-book series that the books continually get spicier, and especially books 3 and 4, it just completely changes level of spice. I would have preferred if the author would have kept it a closed door book series, because I think sometimes as a reader, you question, is this author falling for change but also falling for what people like or want more open door scenes? And I'm not saying that that's not like the character of Madison, but it just kind of, the placement of it did not 100% vibe with me in this book. I think if spice is done really well and tasteful, it can be great, but this one just kind of felt like, honestly, that it was thrown into the book. I also really struggled with some of the characterization and romantic interests with Madison and James. And here's why. I felt like that their knowing of each other from childhood could have been built up a little more in some of the other books. But I also just found some parts of it really cute and really fun, but then some parts of it were like, wait, what's going on? What are we doing here? What's the deal with Tommy, James's brother, who kind of makes different appearances in the book? And I was just a tad confused, and that's a bummer for me. I really like Sarah Adams as a writer. I enjoy her, but I have to say, if I were to look at all 4 of these books, this would be one that I probably wouldn't have on my bookshelf, which, again, that is no shade to Sarah Adams. I still rated this 3.5 stars because I thought it was a good ending to the series, but this one was a little bit of a disappointment for me. But having said that, if you've read the other 3 books, I think you need to read In Your Dreams by Sarah Adams. I think you need to find out what happens with Madison, but I'll be honest, of those 4 books, I would love to have Practice Makes Perfect and Beg, Borrow, Steal on my bookshelf. This is one that I would be okay not having. Anyways, we're gonna move on. And I believe that the next book that I went into, just based on the scheduling and calendar, it's looking like I read Kingdom of Ash, which took me almost 2 weeks to read. It looks like I read Kingdom of Ash, which took me almost 2 weeks to read. Now, this is the final book in the Throne of Glass series. This book is almost 1,000 pages, you guys. I think, yeah, it's 980 pages. And I knew reading this one again that it was going to put me in just kind of a place of either a reading slump, which it did not, but it definitely just took me a while. And I will say too, I didn't want this story to end. There were days where I would crush this book. I would read one day I read almost 300 pages in this book. I was so excited to just get to the last book. If you know, you know, this book is jam-packed, full of adventure, full of the end game, full of the war, of the fighting, of the just different political plot lines and details in this book. And you're kind of following, I want to say at one point, 4 different storylines that all captivate you for different reasons. And I just remember reading this book and going, I really don't want this to end. I've loved being back in this world, and I was kind of grieving being done with Throne of Glass. Reading Empire Storms and Tower of Dawn, I was like, okay, I'll take a break for a little bit. But then as soon as I jumped back in, had about, I don't know, I would say a couple weeks break, I was so hooked on this book. I love Kingdom of Ash. This is a full 5 stars for me. This to me is probably one of the best books that Sarah J. Maas has read in all of her books. Now, I say that by also saying I haven't read Crescent City, and I'm not planning on reading Crescent City anytime soon, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But I have to say, I absolutely loved finishing this book. I cried at the end. There are several characters in this book that you kind of get a neat bow wrapped up, but you also get an open end of knowing that Sarah J. Maas really intentionally could write a whole other spin-off series about characters and in this series, and I would lose my ever-loving mind. Sarah J. Maas, I'd be so happy if you wrote a spin-off series about Manon. I'm just gonna say it. And also Vaughn. That's all I'm gonna say. No spoilers in the comments for those that haven't read this book, but I love Kingdom of Ash. This was a good time. It took me some time to read it for the length, but also because I just wasn't ready for it to end. So then by this point, I'm like 3.5 weeks into June and going, well, I'm gonna try to finish one more book. Ironically enough, I had gotten the next Kindle book for the Vera Wongs series. So the Vera Wongs series has a second book. It is a sequel to the first. It's not really a series necessarily, but you can read it like a series, and it was available. I had borrowed it and it just popped up on my Libby, which is Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man. This one I rated 3.5 stars. So I, shockingly enough, was able to get into this and not be put off by being back in the same world over and over again. And for this one, I do want to see if I can find the review that I posted for this one. This is what I said for my review for the second one. I was so happy to dive back into this cozy mystery world and felt like it was fun to read another story. But this one took a dark turn really fast, so be prepared for that. I won't give spoilers, but just be aware that I enjoyed new characters, but at moments needed reviews of the minor characters from even the last book. I wish that it was tighter plot-wise, but actually may have liked the ending though a little better if it was. I'm not great with my words, but I will just say that I really, really enjoyed reading this book. I thought it was so fun. I loved the new characters that came into this one with Vera. I love that we get Vera just realizing her age, but also realizing that she can't do it all on her own, and she can't necessarily be someone that needs to have it all together always, and I really liked that a lot. So those are the books that I read in the month of June. 4 books. It's not as much as I would like, but I'm gonna very, very quickly, I don't want this video to be super long for my first one back. I'm gonna very, very quickly kind of run through some books that I want to read in the month of July and August. Kind of, you could think about this as my long list of summer TBR reads, and I will also be filming a video about books that I bought for my birthday, which is going to be a really fun one. So let's very quickly talk about some books that I have on my summer TBR, books that I definitely didn't get to in June, and I know I need to get to in July and August. Like, need is a strong word, but it's true. Here is though what you will not find this summer, and that is Crescent City. I know I have done other videos where I've said I need to read Crescent City. It's on my summer TBR, but guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. I just finished Throne of Glass, and my brain just needs to look at shorter, smaller books. Crescent City books are massive, and I was gonna go visit a friend in July who owns these 2 books that she mailed to me, but now that I'm not gonna go see her for a while, I really don't feel as much pressure to read these, and I'm not stressed about it. I can read them in September before the next ACOTAR book comes out, and I have time. And who knows, one of them might make an appearance in July or August, but it is not on my long-term game plan right now. Okay, so the first book, I actually want to read this relatively soon. It is Sharon McMahon's The Small and the Mighty, 12 Unsung Americans Who Changed the Course of History from the Founding to the Civil Rights Movement. This book has been on my TBR for a long time. I actually thrifted this book for $10. When I was on my Bristol trip, I found it. And guys, this book is brand new. There are no, I mean, it's used because somebody owned it before, but I'm so excited to read this one. If you don't know who Sharon McMahon is, she's kind of a big deal on Instagram. Called Sharon Says So is her tag name. And then this book is 281 pages. It's short. I'm really excited to read this book, and it gives a lot of 4th of July vibes. Like the cover alone, I cannot wait to get into this book. I have one book that I'm currently in process and in the middle of, but I can't wait to read this book next. And that is The Small and the Mighty by Sharon McMahon. Okay, I have a couple of fantasy books that I want to talk about real quick, and 2 of these I just purchased. So I'm not going to talk a lot about because I'm going to talk about them in my next video of the birthday book haul. So let's just briefly talk about it. We have The Second Death of Locke by B.L. Bovalino. Really want to read this summer. I mean, the cover alone gives like a grittiness to a summer. It is a fantasy book. There will be a second book, but it's not technically in a series, which is kind of nice. I like that. I like that you can have standalone books in fantasy, but not have to read the other one to read the next one, which that's really cool. Maybe other authors should start doing that. But The Second Death of Locke, I'm very excited about this one. I got that on a birthday book buying spree, which I said we'll talk about in another video. I have Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I have not read a Brandon Sanderson book. I really want to read this one this summer. I mean, you guys, she looks like kind of low-key a mermaid. The colors of this cover are beautiful. I really like that it seems like a pretty short book. 360 pages. Like, that's amazing. And I have not read Brandon Sanderson. This is a standalone book by him. He actually wrote this book for his wife, which I think is just precious. So this is another one that I want to read this summer. probably this month, if I'm being really honest. The other book that I have got to read at some point this summer is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. This book is one I've had on my bookshelf for over a year. Gareth Brown is a newer author and definitely newer to me. This was his debut novel, and apparently this book is really fun. When you hear the title Book of Doors, you think of books that lead you into other worlds, and that's essentially what this is. It's books with magical powers, magical properties, and the main female character of this book kind of gets a book on accident, but then she finds herself kind of in a war with somebody else who apparently is like a really, really bad guy to get the other books. And I'm very curious of this one, truly. This one doesn't fully give me summer vibes, so it is one I could see myself pushing off until this fall, but nonetheless, I'm putting it in this list because I need to read it, and it's just been sitting on my bookshelf for no good reason. I need to read this book. My next genre I have is romance. So we have Emma by Jane Austen. I will be reading this one this month. You guys, the golden cover in this, beautiful. I'm really craving right now a classic novel. I don't know why. I think summertime is a time to read classic books, and I cannot wait to read this one. And it is Emma, again by Jane Austen. I love Jane Austen, and I'm just super excited to read that one. Then we have Score by Kennedy Ryan. You guys, look how just like beautiful this cover is. Like, can we not? Kennedy, come on, girl. I love this. Whoever you used to do the graphic for this, it's gorgeous. But this is another romance book. I've talked about this in prior videos, and definitely am planning on reading this one, hopefully as well in July. There's actually quite a few books I've already kind of highlighted and said, I'm reading this, I'm reading this, I'm reading this, so you can hold me to it for my July reading videos. But I'm excited. This is a summer romance by a Black author, and I really want to read some more of her works. I've heard she's amazing, so I'm coming for you. Score by Kennedy Ryan. Okay, I feel like I'm talking really, really fast. Okay, we have two historical fiction novels. One is like historical fiction mystery, and that's Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I've talked about this one before, but also this one has been on my shelf for a really long time, and I need to read it, and I want to read it, and I'm intrigued to read it. And this book talks about a family from the Caribbean, and it also, I want to say, takes place in summer. Maybe not, but it feels like it does. Anyways, I'm really excited to read this one. We also have The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. This one I'll probably read in August, if I'm being real with you guys, because I've heard you really have to have some time to sit in this one, and it's not fast moving, but it's really good. And I feel like in August, when my son is back in school, I will have longer periods of time where I can sit and read this book for several hours and really get to the meat and potatoes of this book much faster. So I will hold off on this one for a little bit, but I'm really anxious and excited to get to this one. I've had this on my shelf since January, but purposely held off for the summer because I felt like this would be a really good summer read. And then lastly, we have The Wedding People by Alison Esbach. One of my friends is going to read this book soon, and I'm really tempted to join her in this one. This is a contemporary fiction. It's set in, I want to say Maine or Rhode Island. Yes, Newport, Rhode Island, which I have been to. I have an old neighbor that is back in Newport, so I'm really excited to read this one, and I think it'll be a fun time. Okay, this was a hodgepodge video of what I read in June, plus let's just talk about some summer TBR hopefuls. I am so happy to be back in the swing of things though, to be back on BookTube, to talk about books, to yap about books, but more importantly, to remind you guys that I am here, I am alive and well, and sometimes life calls for breaks. Sometimes life calls for rest and rejuvenation and resets, and that's okay, and I clearly had to take one. So we are back to talk about books. Please comment below, please subscribe, please like this video, share it with a friend, drink your sweet tea from Chick-fil-A, and guys, let's just enjoy reading the rest of this summer. We'll see you next time. Cheers.